हि परमो लोके धर्मे सत्यं प्रतिष्ठितं धर्म संश्रुतमेतच्च पितुर्वचनमुत्तमम्. Sitaram. Before I start, I guess I want to give a small request. Something new, I want to try this out. I want to see how this goes. It's just that I'm going to give a cue. Whenever I give that cue, I want everybody to applaud. Okay? So let's have a rehearsal right now. Sitaram, my name is Ashruth. And okay, yeah, this is the cue by the way. So Sitaram, my name is Ashruth and I'm going to present fatherly love in Ramayana. When this comes down, you guys stop too. Okay. With that done, let's continue. Up. Okay. So, the first thing that I kind of realized when I got this topic was, what questions do I need to ask? The topic is fairly simple. Fatherly love in Ramayana. 4 words, right? I got to kind of 3 questions here. First, what does it mean to be a father? Fatherly love is a pretty nice term to use. We use words a lot. But what does that really mean? What qualities or traits makes one's love towards someone fatherly? Going deeper into that question. If fatherly love means something, showing affection towards somebody, what makes that affection fatherly? And the third question, and that has to do with the last word, Ramayana, right? What insights can Ramayana give in this topic? Ramayana, for all of us almost, is a place that gives us ideas, role models, people to follow, things to follow, insights to grasp, all sorts of things. It's a vast ocean. And with this topic, what does Ramayana give us? What does Ramayana yield to us from this ocean of knowledge? And these questions kind of converged for me to kind of 2 essential questions that I want to discuss here, or these 2 questions are the questions that I think should be the focus. Kind of like focal points right here. What does it mean to be an ideal father? We just discussed about the ideal mother. The ideal mother is Sumitra. We saw various, cases for it, right? It's quite interesting, but for a father in Ramayana, we see probably 3 biological examples of fathers, 3 predominant fathers in Ramayana. What do these fathers do? Are they ideal? Is there some ideal qualities in them? If they're not completely ideal, what makes an ideal father? What can we take from them that makes them ideal? And that kind of leads to the second question. Rather than examining whether we have an ideal father or not, why don't we look at the affection displayed by that person? What is the essence of fatherly love? And this kind of really was something that I was really interested in. We talk about a lot of Mahabhavas. The theme of this conference is love and human relations, right? If I take a human relationship, if I take the affection displayed by somebody, and I just keep on going deeper, probing deeper, what are the traits, what are the characteristics, what do they display? Why do we call it as this type of an affection? Where does that bring us to? What does that bring us to? What makes fatherly love fatherly love? And these 2 questions are the questions I want to answer. So, the next thing I did was, how do I go about doing it? I've got my wife, how do I get to the house, right? The first thing that I thought about was, why don't we look at fathers in Ramayana, right? So, that's what the first thing is. Examine the relationships between biological fathers and their sons in Valmiki's Ramayana, or children in general. In this case, fathers, most of them have sons, so that's how it goes. But, looking at these fathers, what traits they display? How do they react with their children? What interactions do they have? That may provide us some insight. And the other point, which I think is very important as well, is even though we may not have many fathers, biological fathers being discussed in Ramayana, we have a lot of father figures. I've only covered 2 of them this topic, in fact. There's like multiple, and like Anna said right in the beginning, right? There are multiple instances where people display different bhavas depending on the time and the context. Taking each bhava and dissecting it is also something as well. So I like to call these people as father figures in that context. So looking at their behavior, that would be something that could give us more insight, some wisdom as well. So the first thing we're going to look at, and I'm sorry if the topic is a little redundant. We saw him fully yesterday. I'm really sorry. But we're going to first look at Ravana as a father. Now, Ravana, most of us know him as Loka Ravana, the guy who makes the world cry. Right? His name itself suggests that. Just like how Rama is the person who makes everybody enjoy, Ravana is the one who makes the world cry. Ravano, Loka Ravana. We see that everywhere in the Kanda. When you do Parayanam, it's almost impossible not to miss it. Right? And this Ravana has a lot of qualities. We saw those yesterday as well. Ravana is the one who has mastered his senses, right? Indriyani Jitva. Mandodari says that as well. Of course, it's also interesting that he loses to those senses as well. But Ravana is a man of austerity, a man who can make the world cry. That itself requires its own, own capability. And this man, right, as I said, he has control over his senses. He's a person who doesn't show much emotion. In today's term, we probably call him something as stoic. Somebody who's able to, just sit there, send people, and then see what happens. So, when we see this in Yuddhakanda, however, Ravana surprisingly displays a lot of emotion. Throughout, the Yuddham, a significant portion of shlokas, Valmiki is dedicating to Ravana's feelings throughout the Yuddham. And it's very interesting to see where these feelings are centered, where these emotional outbursts are happening. Ravana is having emotional outbursts when his children and his brother die. And this is where all of his emotional outbursts occur, right? And the first example and the first son that Ravana loses is Akshakumara. At that point, Tatasya Raksho Adhipatir Mahatma Hanumatakshay Nihete Kumare Manas Samadhaya Tadendra Kalpam Samadhi Desha Indrajitam Sarosham. Manas Samadhaya. That kind of shows the first break. Here, for the first time, Ravana has to control himself and send someone else, right? And we'll be seeing this kind of term again. There's more terms. Ravana's speed increases. We're going to see that next. Udvegam, right? Atikaya goes next. Atikaya is probably the next major son. Dalimanuni Uriya, Putra. Atikaya. He dies. And at that point, and the Sargam is called Ravana's agony. It's very interesting. When you go over it, it doesn't seem like Ravana displays a lot of emotion actually. Ravana doesn't cry. Ravana doesn't do anything like that. But it's called Ravana's agony. And I feel like it's apt because of this one word right there, Udvegam, right? The first thing that occurs to Ravana as soon as his son doesn't come back is stress. That Udvegam, that Vegam, it develops in his mind. And we can see that as he keeps on losing more relatives, more of his sons, or as more of his sons go and never come back, that stress, that speed gets even more developed. In a sense that Ravana losing his mind, right? We saw Smriti Bhramshat Buddhinasha yesterday. That Smriti Bhramsha to me seems to be really related to Ravana's losing his sons, Ravana's affection towards his sons, the genuine care, the genuine feeling he had towards his sons. Okay? And the biggest example is probably Indrajit. Ravana doesn't just feel for Indrajit's loss. Ravana motivates Indrajit multiple times. And these motivations are really hyperbolic. It's very interesting when you read through them. Tvamastravit Shashtravidam Varishtaha Sura Suranam Pishokadata Sureshu Sendreshu Cha Drishtakarma Pitamaha Radhana Sanchitastraha. Sorry.
Okay.
So Ravana basically gives Indrajit all sorts of attributes. You are an Astravit, you are a Shastravit. You have beat everybody. Suranam Shokadata. You have given sadness to everybody, to be literal. Sureshu Sendreshu Drishtakarma Pitamaha Radhana Sanchitastraha. And this way Ravana motivates Indrajit during Sundarakanda. This is, right after he sends Aksha. Right? It's Sundarakanda, the 48th Sarga, 2nd to the 15th shlokas. By the way, and this is something I want to note, I've only taken one shloka here. He's motivating Indrajit for 12 shlokas. For 12 shlokas, Ravana is going on and on, motivating Indrajit, giving him advice. And you'll be seeing these brackets a lot. That here, when I'm putting one shloka, I'm taking one shloka in that interval. So just keep that in mind. It's not just one shloka here, it's 12. In the same way, we see, the motivation is little less in Yuddhakanda now. But the motivation is even more kind of absurd to me. Jahi Veera Mahabaho Bhratarao Ramalakshmano Adrishyo Drishyamano Va Sarvatatam Baladhikaha. This is after he's failed once, by the way. So he basically says, you can kill Rama and Lakshmana because, however you do it, you're always the strongest. Sarvatatam Baladhikaha. Whether you do it seen or unseen, you're always the strongest. This is very, very motivational in the sense that it's almost like he's praising Indrajit and it's like he's sending his son and wishing him best of luck, but in a much more exaggerated sense. And we see this behavior consistently with Ravana and Indrajit, this kind of motivation. This again happens in Yuddhakanda. So this motivation, he motivates Indrajit. And even more powerful, motivation is on one side. The other side is Ravana after Indrajit's death. And this to me feels like a whole process. It's the 93rd Sarga. And that 93rd Sarga, we can see that descent slowly after Indrajit dies, how Ravana reacts, what happens to him. So, Satam Pratimayam Shrutva Vadham Putrasya Darunam Ghoram Indrajita Sankhe Kashmalam Chavishan Mahat. For the first time, outside of war, Ravana loses consciousness. Kashmalam Chavishan Mahat. He gets into a deep misery. Upalabhya Chirat Sanyam Raja Rakshasa Pungavaha Putra Shokardito Dinaha Vrilapa Kulendriyaha. Here there's two words, Putra Shokarditaha, Akulendriyaha. And these two words sum up his mental state almost perfectly. Ravana has lost all of his sons. Indrajit, like Ambriji said yesterday, was one of his hands. One of his hands has been cut off. But it's not just that. He has lost somebody he's genuinely cared for, spent so much time nurturing, caring, sending, taking care of. He in this whole, lament, he starts lamenting after this. Ravana starts to lament. Vilalapa Akulendriyaha. And Akulendriyaha, again, that udvegam, that manifestation of stress, it goes to the point where his indriyas are starting to shake, are starting to get, colorified, in a sense. In this way, Ravana's mental state is slowly deteriorating, and it's mostly because of his loss for his sons. And again, Valmiki takes his Putra Shokarditaha. If you see the next sloka I've taken, so Putra Vadha Santaptaha Shuraha Krodhavashangataha Samiksha Ravano Buddhya Sitam Hantam Yavasyata. And before that, there's one more shloka, and that's even more interesting, I guess. Evam Adi Vilapartam Ravanam Rakshasadhikam. Avivesha Mahan Kopaha Putra Vyasana Sambhavaha. Again, Putra Vyasana Sambhavaha. The worry, the shokam from losing his son manifests into kopam. So now from that Mahattana Kashmalam, from that huge misery, he is entering into the realm of anger. And the next shloka has something very interesting again. Buddhya Sita Hantam Vivasyata. Here, Ravana is not mindless. He hasn't lost all of his deciding faculty. Because the next thing he says is, after Putra Vadha Santaptaha, after losing his son, after feeling that, that heat, Shuraha Krodha Vashangataha, he is in Krodha's Vasha, Krodha Vashangataha. But even then, his deciding faculty, he started to analyze how to kill Sita. And that's where we see the whole descent where Ravana proceeds to go kill Sita. Maya Mamavatsena Vanchanartham Manokasam Kinchideva Hatam Tatra Sitayamati Darshitam. And it's very clear here. Ravana is not just sad because he has lost all of his wealth, all of his, Sena, all of his Balam. He has lost his son. And him losing his son is the reason why every single shloka in this sarga is going like this. This descent into madness, everything is because of Ravana losing his son. And Ravana and Valmiki is repeating again and again, Putra Vyasana Santaptaha. We can see Putra Shokarditaha. This feeling of loss, overwhelming loss for somebody genuinely cared for, that is very, very clear here. Overall, and I think this concludes it perfectly here, Ravana, as a father, he deeply cares and has a sense of affection towards his children. This is Ravana as a father. However, And this is something also you have to keep in mind as we see Ravana as a father. Ravana's love towards his children appears to be misguided at times. Now, carrying an affection is very nice, but just how much is too much? Or where do you direct that affection? How do you direct that affection? All of that matters, and that's very important. Today, people say you don't care, you don't care. But I don't think it's less about whether you care or not. It's about when you care, how you care, for whom you care, and at what time. So, here, Ravana shows this very clearly with Vibhishana. Now, Indrajit insults Vibhishana, and frankly, it's a very insulting way he spoke. Kim namate tata kanishta vakyam anarthakam cheva subhita vaccha asmin kule yepi bhavenna jataha sopi drasham naiva vadenna puryat. And by the way, again, not one shloka. There's a lot of shlokas. Indrajit insults, that sarga itself is called Indrajit insults Vibhishana, and almost half of it is Indrajit insulting Vibhishana. And here, for the sake of brevity, Indrajit calls, Vibhishana's words as meaningless. Vibhishana as a fearful person, as a bainangoli in Tamil. Somebody who is not even fit to be in this family. Again, this fit to be in this family thing, we'll be seeing that. That's also a huge part of Ravana. Family. How Ravana treats family. We're going to be seeing that later. Sopi drasham neva vadena puryat. Nobody in this family should be saying something like this or be doing something like this. This is what Indrajit tells Vibhishana. And Vibhishana rightly reprimands Indrajit. He calls him Natata mantre tava nishthayosti balastvam adyapi vipatva buddhi. He calls Indrajit as immature. He calls Indrajit as somebody who's not having the capability or the yogyata to, get involved in these kind of sambhashanas, in sabha sambhashanas. And when this happens, Ravana's response is even more interesting. Ravana doesn't go after Indrajit, fine, but Ravana could have at least seen a merit in Vibhishana's speech. Rather, even here, Ravana, blindly sides with Indrajit. To the point where Ravana gives a whole spiel about how relatives are, poison, how relatives are, are really dangerous. And, there's also an elephant story coming there. That one's not as nice as the one Srinidhi ji said. But anyways, Ravana goes on this whole spiel for around 15 shlokas. And the whole time, and it's very interesting how he's attacking Vibhishana. He's putting it under some sort of rationale, some sort of logic, and then he's putting it. So again, he knows what he's doing. He's not just blindly supporting him. That blindness is there, but at the same time, there's some rational, cool thinking, some method to how he's attacking Vibhishana. But here, Ravana's love is very misplaced. Ravana, is showering affection, or not even showering affection, taking the side that wouldn't be of welfare to his son. So here, there is this boundary between caring and welfare. And Ravana cares, but does Ravana really want, or not want, but is Ravana really acting in the welfare of his son, is not something we can see here. And another very important point is that Ravana's son still died for Sita, for his obsession towards Sita. And I think the best example of this is when Vibhishana tells Ravana, Jajasva kopam sukha dharma nashanam bhajasva dharmam rati kirti vardhanam prasida jivema saputra bandhavaha pradiyatam dasharathaya maithilim. Here, saputra bandhavaha jivema. This is after Ravana has already lost his son. He's already lost Akshakumara, right? Sundarakandam happened. Now Vibhishana is advising Ravana. And I think Vibhishana deliberately takes Saputra Bandhava here, just to show that, you've already lost somebody. And if you keep on going down this path, you're going to lose even more. I mean, if you've already lost one son, shouldn't that be enough for you to, call this off? But that doesn't stop Ravana. Even after Akshakumara is sent and he's dead, he sends Atikaya still. He still does send Atikaya. He still does send Indrajit. All of this lamenting, we have to remember, is after he sends his sons towards their deaths. So, at the end of the day, let's correct that statement I gave at the beginning. Overall, as a father, yes, Ravana deeply cares and has a sense of affection towards his children. This is true. But at times, however, this love can be blind and dwarfed by his obsession towards Sita. And here, I want to bring back that focal question. What is the essence of fatherly love? One aspect of fatherly love is caring. Caring, service, caring, taking care of your children, motivating them, feeling for them. But, making sure that that caring is not toxic. Or, as Srinidhi was talking about negative parenting and positive parenting, right? Making sure that care does not go to the point where, it's blind. Or, in some cases, in Ravana's case, in this case, his obsession towards something else actually dwarfed or actually, took more of his mental state than the care he had towards his sons. So those kind of mistakes can happen when your care and welfare aren't the same. And this is what we see with Ravana overall. And again, this is the attitude towards family point I wanted to talk about. So as soon as I was going down this rabbit hole, I was looking at how Ravana feels for his sons. This is something that this is the first time I actually thought about looking at those shlokas. I got to see this new perspective because of it. I found myself asking this question: what if Ravana's sons had resisted? Right? Kumbhakarna resisted. What happened? And there Ravana gives an answer. Manyo Guru Rivacharyaha. He says, how dare you go against your guru, go against your acharya? How dare you go against the person who has taken care of you, the person who's, the head, the leader, the person who teaches you? How dare you go against my word? And again, for Ravana, Kulam, family is everything. In that sense, Ravana is kind of like a gangster, a gang family, where blood matters more than anything else. Blood ties are everything. Ravana and his gang kind of makes sense in that context. But for Ravana, the attitude of family is something where no matter what, you stand by your family. No matter what you do, what your family needs. Sabandhar yopaniteshu sahayo pokalpate. And again, Ravana says this in a different place. But for Ravana, no matter whoever is a relative, is somebody who comes for your help no matter what situation you're in. Now, we did see some time back, I think somebody was talking about Mitra Bhava yesterday. And they're talking about, how a friend in need is a friend indeed. Right? Where does need stop? Is need where? What does it mean to be in need? Let's put it like that. Is helping somebody, do bad things, put simply, is that what a relative does or a friend does? And that's something we need to keep in mind. By need, are we actually, spoiling them? Or by need, are we helping them? And Ravana's attitude towards his family is that I need help. I've done something. I've made a huge mistake. Please help me. And if you don't help me, you're not part of my family. You've made a huge mistake. And it's very interesting, and that's why I call this like father, like son. Children, follow their fathers. Indrajit says the exact same thing. It's not like Indrajit, and Indrajit is not really that mature when we see him throughout Yuddhakanda. I mean, the way he talked to Vibhishana itself kind of shows that to us. To me, when Indrajit says all of this, and Indrajit says this when he's fighting Lakshmana, before he's fighting Lakshmana, he's talking to Vibhishana, right? And that's the 87th Sarga. And so Indrajit goes on for around, 7 shlokas, the 11th, the 17th shloka. He talks about this exact thought. It's almost like he's saying exactly what Ravana is saying. So it shows that, and this shows how, I think it gives us insight into how Ravana raised his children. And that's also important. When we're looking at a father is not somebody who's there for, 2 days. He's there throughout your whole life. He accompanies you from the beginning till, a major part of your life. And this kind of, shows us how Ravana's attitude towards certain things imprinted on his children, imprinted on Indrajit. And I think this gives us even more evidence towards showing how Ravana treated, his family, or how his family, what ideas they had and how that was influenced. And Indrajit says the same thing. Yadrishi te nishachara, sojanena tvayashakyam, parusham Ravana anujara. You're not with your own people. And that own people feeling, that family, that no matter what, sahayo pakalpate, right? You have to stick by me no matter what mistake I've made. that attitude, I think, is a big part of Ravana's fatherly affection itself. And to me, that sums up Ravana to a T in terms of as a father. And I want to keep in mind that here we're seeing Ravana's aspect of caring. That's why I boldened that part at the end there. Now, before we go on, this is a small interlude. How many fathers do we have in the audience right now? Raise your hands. Sure. Okay, so we have around 10 people, maybe 15. So first, let's applaud for them. Because they're about to do something really tough. I want you guys to probably, I'll give you guys a minute maybe. You see this prompt here, what does it mean to be an ideal father? Take the first thing that comes to your mind. Take that idea and keep it in your head. So as we run through this whole presentation, it'll be pretty tough. It's 28 slides. I'm sorry. As we run through this whole presentation, keep that and look forward on it. We may have an activity at the end where I did not force other people to participate in at all. We may have an activity at the end where that may be useful. So I'll give you guys a minute, starting now. You guys can talk to me. That's okay.
Can you repeat your question, please?
The question is, what does it mean to be an ideal father? What is the first thing that comes to your mind when I say ideal father?
Can others do this?
Yeah, go ahead. Anybody can do it. I just said fathers because it sounded more interesting. And I wanted to do the applaud thing again. So.
Fathers can answer better.
Yeah, that's also a good point. That's a very good point.
Mainly Suryanarayanan ji can answer first.
Okay. And with that being said, 1 minute is up. So I hope everybody has something locked in. And again, let's give them some applause for 1 minute of hard thinking. Brainstorming. So let's go on from here. The next father we're going to see is this person. Yeah. That's the question. It's a simple question. Yeah, just brainstorm. It's hard work, G. It's very hard work. It's a lot of hard work just to think. Believe me. So, Vali.
Not like you. I accept.
Vali. So that's the next father we're going to be looking at. So in terms of biological fathers, Vali is somebody who, compared to the other person we're going to look at, and Ravana, he has relatively less screen time. Vali is there primarily, according to me at least, in two places, which is why I call it the transformation. There's a Vali before Rama, and there's a Vali after Rama. And the way Vali behaves before Rama and after Rama are very different. I mean, it could also be because of the amount of information you get from Valmiki about Vali is very limited before Rama. But when we look at Vali before Rama, how does he behave towards his family? Or how does he behave towards his son? And there is only one instance where Angada is indirectly referred before Rama comes. Tara talks about it. Purvameva maya vira shrutam kathayato vachaha Angadasya kumarasya vakshyamitva hitam vachaha. Tara is, telling Vali not to go, telling Vali not to fight Sugriva. And at that point, she, brings up a very key piece of information. Angada, with his spies, has found that Rama is on their side, and Rama is very powerful. It's a very, very strong deterrent, and Angada has done this by himself, which is a very impressive thing. How does Vali react to it? Vali seems to just dismiss all of it. Put simply, it's a don't care attitude. I mean, you guys do whatever you want, I don't really care. Angada did that, okay, fine. He shoves it aside and he says that I'm going to fight Sugriva anyways. And I think this, encapsulated perfectly. Nacha karyo vishadaste raghavam pratimat krite. You don't have to worry about me when it comes to, Rama at all. Dharmajñascha katadñascha katham pabam karishyati. I mean, the last part kind of shows his preconceptions about Rama as well. But the point is, he's saying, you don't really have to worry about me. I don't really, need that. And he has this tone of dismissal, this kind of a don't care attitude. That's Vali before Rama. Vali after Rama kind of has a huge sea change in all of this. The way he's speaking to Rama on his deathbed is very, very different. He's extremely concerned about his son. A lot lot of Vali after Rama is about his worries for his son. Oh, we've come through this far, there's a little more to go, that's why I asked for applause. We're at the halfway. That being said,
So how do you rate fathers, right? In lot of people used to get a questionnaire, right? Ranking. Do you have any something like ranking of?
and this is a question, good job, Q&A session starts right now. No, that's a good thing actually.
No,
because
just,
I want to
just
spread
keep
the
them engaged.
don't have anything else to do. Rating the fathers, what I've done, and we'll be looking at it later, is I've asked another audience the same question.
Okay.
They've given their own answers. I have it right there actually. And I've put it right there as well.
Oh, great.
And we're going to see, and it's completely open. I am not going to ask you guys to do anything other than look at the answers you have here. Look at the answers they've given and see how they match, how they don't match, what's different. And I'll tell you what the audience is like. I think you all have a fair idea about what it is, but I'll surprise you guys.
So you have framed some research problem out of it.
Yeah, you could say that. Very, very subjective, but it's something like that.
It's a good topic actually.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Let's continue. So back to what we were doing here.
Wali.
Vali. Vali is concerned about Angada's welfare. This is the Vali we see after Rama. Vali on his deathbed. And repeatedly, for 4 shlokas, he talks about this. Idaputram gunashreshtam angadam kanakangadam natvatmanam aham shoche natara nach bandhavan yithaputram gunashreshtam angadam kanakangadam. Sorry for the font mismatch there. But when he's talking about Angada, he's literally saying, I'm not worried about anybody else. As compared to Tara, I'm not even worried about them. But compared to my son Angada, I'm very worried about him. Yithaputram gunashreshtam angadam kanakangadam. And it goes to the point where we kind of see a Sharanagati here. We kind of see, rather than Vali giving Sharanagata, he's upadicifying his son to Rama. Tvam hi shastacha goptacha karya karya vidhu sthitaha. And I think that's very beautiful. Something that we all need to learn at some point is how much can we do, how much can we give, and after a point, what gives welfare. And that kind of difference between possessiveness and welfare. And that's another aspect we saw before this. Ravana is very possessive. That carrying, that carrying affection, tends to some sort of possessiveness. And Vali at the end breaks free of that possessiveness. He realizes that the way that he has brought up his child, or the way that he has treated him so far, isn't good, isn't perfect, isn't dharma. And he goes to the point where he realizes, maybe if I give him to somebody else, they're a better person for his welfare. And in that sense, giving up his son for that welfare kind of shows that change in Vali's attitude towards his family, his affection towards Angada. Starting from a tone of dismissal to somewhere where he is able to think for the welfare of his son. Wishing for welfare seems to be another very important part of fatherly affection. Just how important it is to care, it is that important to be genuinely, hitakaraha, somebody who wishes for the hita of that person, for that son. And that comes with responsibility as well. And it shows Vali's responsibility towards his son. So again, he's extremely concerned about the son, and he has the genuine desire of welfare for his son. And I think that's very important to keep in mind. And that's all we have for Vali so far. Next up we have Dasharatha. Now, I'll be honest with you, I feel like Dasharatha is one of the hardest characters to understand in Ramayana. And I think so because, see, I was talking about how in Ramayana we have examples for everything. The ideal Indian mother is Sumitra. Now, Anna's written about this in the preface of his book. He's given a whole paragraph dedicated to this. There's nothing about the ideal Indian father in that paragraph. Is there? And why? Dasharatha seems to be the ideal Indian father, a person who is able to take care of our Rajyam, our kingdom so capably, a person who is able to, give up everything for the sake of truth, such a Dharmatma. Why is he not the ideal Indian father? And that's why I've put here the example. Is he the example? And that, I think that's a major part of fatherly affection, of fatherly love in Ramayana is, who is Dasharatha? What makes up his thinking for Rama? And the first thing we see for Dasharatha's love comes in the first chapter of Ramayana. Sarva eva tu tasyeshtaha chatvaraha purushashabhaha swasharira vinirvrittaha chatvara iva bahavaha. Put simply, Dasharatha loves all of his sons equally. They are like his four limbs. Chatvara iva bahavaha. And this is the fifth shloka. We come to the next shloka and we see this. Tesham vi mahatejaha ramo ratikaraha pituhu swayambhuriva bhutanam bhuva gunavattaraha. So, it's contradictory. The first, 10 shlokas of Ramayana, we see a contradiction. Just like that. He loves his sons equally. But in them, he loves his son Rama even more. Ratikaraha pituhu. Why? Swayambhuriva bhutanam abhuva gunavattaraha. He is because of his gunas. And another interesting point, Ratikaraha. What does Rati mean? In Tamil we have a very good word, Idupada. Ramar Kitaka, I'm not sure how to translate Idupada in English. Ramar Kitaka, compared, he loves all of his sons equally. But Ramar Kitaka, Idupada Dasharatharku undu. Ratikaraha pituhu.
Is it inclination?
Inclination, I don't think so. Idupada seems better. Involvement, maybe deeper. Involvement works fine. He is more involved. Involved in the sense, let's not take involved as a literal meaning. Let's take kind of a contextual meaning, right? He's more engaged with Rama, more involved with Rama. That involvement for Dasharatha with Rama seems more. And why is that? It's because of his tall virtues. And this is very interesting. Dasharatha's love is kind of going beyond fatherhood itself for Rama. It's rooted. We saw rootedness today. It's rooted. The place where that love is emanating, stemming from, is Rama's virtues. So Dasharatha's love for Rama isn't just a fatherly affection. That fatherly affection, I think, is the first shloka. That's what it shows. He loves all of his sons equally. But that idupada, or that involvement, or that engagement that he has with Rama, that, attracts him towards Rama more, Ratikaraha, is because of his virtues. So there is a kind of a virtuous love. Let's use that term for it. Now, we talked about how nice this virtuous love is, right? Loving somebody not just because they're your son, but loving them for the person who they are, or making sure that also is rooted in their welfare. Making sure that rather than just being your son, they are also their own person. They are somebody who has their own gunas, their own capabilities, their own virtues. And being able to look at and accept that is a very beautiful thing. And Dasharatha does that very well. But there are consequences. And this virtuous love, first, what does that do? It's the reason why Rama becomes the crown prince. Right? Soham Vishramam Ichchami Putram Krutva Prajahite Sannikashtaniman Sarvan Anumanya Dijarshabhan. Dasharatha thinks Rama is fit for the throne because of his virtues. And that is rooted because of his love for virtues. The king decides the next king based on what he likes. And for Dasharatha, that like is towards dharma, towards virtues. So when Rama, he sees as a virtuous person, his son, that becomes the automatic next choice for crown prince. So that's the first consequence. The next thing that happens, right? The same virtuous love becomes this kind of benchmark for Dasharatha. He hasn't placed that much love on anybody else. And that's what he tells to Kaikeyi as well. Avaliptena janasi tvattah priyatama mama manujo manuja vyagharat ramadanyo vidhiyate. It's clear, Ramadanyaha. There is no one other than Rama. That love. And again, he's able to do, like, again, this is not just one shloka. This goes, that sarga, 5 to 9. So we're looking at around 5 shlokas where he's talking about this love, and on that love he makes that promise. We all know the shloka, Yamuhurtam apashyanstu najiveyam aham dhruvam. It's that gata. And so we kind of see this love and where it's leading. And if we go a little farther, this love towards Rama starts to be the reason for his demise. And we start seeing that process slowly, and the process is very interesting. Throughout the 12th chapter and the 13th chapter, a little after, slowly Rama, when Dasharatha is confronting Kaikeyi at that point, there is a sea change. In one day, from a hale and healthy individual to a happy and enthusiastic individual, Dasharatha has lost everything. That one fact saps him of all the energy, the exuberance he had, all the vitality, the health he had, and all the happiness he had. All of these things. It's like mentally, one day you talk to a person, the next day they're mentally dead. It's that much of a sea change. And within one night, within 2 sargas, this 2 sargas, the duration is huge, but for that one night, we have to remember that even though it's 2 sargas, the duration, in Ramayana, time is very, very interesting. Sundarakanda goes for a whole day. But we have one night is covered in 2 sargas as well. So the breadth at which Valmiki delves into this, we can see how Dasharatha is losing all of this energy, losing this vitality. But that changes that. It's a sudden, almost sudden change. And even more interesting, or even more perhaps very fascinating, I can't find a better word to look at it, is that the grief that Dasharatha feels, or that love turns into some grief. And that grief is devouring his senses. It's almost similar to what we saw yesterday. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bijayate krodhat. Dasharatha shows that. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. And that sammoha, I think, is, coming that before the previous point. Sammohat smriti vibhramaha smriti bhramshat buddhi nashaha. When a deciding faculty goes, all of your senses goes. It's the deciding faculty. Everything under it is gone as well. So, it's almost like, Dharma model like Atta, right? It's devouring, it's consuming his senses. Dasharatha, at the end, the love that he had towards Rama turned into some grief. That grief is devouring his senses, consuming his senses. And at the end of the day, when he was mentally dead, that slowly came to his body. We just saw, 2 days back, Anna was explaining during 8 to 9 class, how we mentally feel, the vegam in our psyche, it gets exhibited in our physical body as well. That process we can see with Dasharatha. As his energy, his happiness, his trust increases, his senses also start to recede slowly. Ramam menugata drishtihi adhyapina nivartate natva pashyami kausalya sadhuma bhavina sprisha. It's a matter of days that Dasharatha becomes like this. That's how this whole process happens. And these are the consequences that lead to the next thing. Dasharatha's death. His demise. Now, Dasharatha's death is an important aspect of Dasharatha. That's how I've written it in the paper as well. Dasharatha's death seems to be predestined. We can see that in the beginning of, Ayodhya Kanda. Divyantarikshe bhumucha ghor mutpatajam bhayam sanchachakshe cha medhavi sharire chakmano jana. Dasharatha is seeing that he's starting to become old. He's seeing omens in the sky that show his death. And this is the first sarga. He describes it even further with Rama in the 4th sarga for 4 shlokas, 14th to the 17th shloka. And, we see this on one hand. And also, even stronger evidence is how Dasharatha killed that boy. The 63rd sarga and the 64th sarga, where he's lamenting about how in the past, his past actions have decided how he is now. It's almost, it's a predestined, it seems to be a predestined death. Dasharatha's death. However, we can't ignore how natural Dasharatha's death seems. Dasharatha as a character is built around Rama. Dasharatha's love for Rama throughout Ayodhya Kanda takes that center stage, right? It's almost to the point where when we're going through Ayodhya Kanda or we're doing Parayanam, this first part, it flashes through our mind for, some time. But after that, we're carried away by Dasharatha, how he feels, his emotions, the way he is. And it seems almost natural to us that Dasharatha as a character would die if Rama leaves. I mean, Srimati herself put it in the question, right? Rama himself kind of knows that if he's gone, Dasharatha will be gone soon. It's almost that natural to us that Dasharatha's death for that character makes sense. And I think that this intertwining of fate, predestined, we have a predestined death that isn't contrived at all. It's not at all contrived. The way it happens is so natural, predestined. The intertwining of fate, nature, and Dasharatha's swabhava ultimately heightens the realism in Ramayana. This is how real life works. And the realism in Ramayana is another topic I'm really interested in. It's something that I really like. So, this was like a gold mine to me. And I think this also not only shows us the realism of Ramayana, how, it's able to take these two concepts, the very idea of fatalism and the very idea of, someone's own nature, their own actions. And it's able to, put them together while making it seem so seamless is amazing. So, let's go back to why I said Dasharatha is a tough character. And it's exactly this. Is Dasharatha's love for Rama bad? Or is Dasharatha's love for Rama harmful in any way? I would like to measure this kind of with a yardstick of dharma. And this is the closest answer I could come up with. Because to me, this death, in fact this death itself kind of encapsulates that. Is Dasharatha like this because of the actions he committed? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. Is Dasharatha like this because of his own nature? That's another question we have to ask as soon as we see this kind of outplay. For me, these consequences that we saw beforehand, I think that we can separate Dasharatha's love into layers for Rama. There is a deep love for Rama's virtues. But I think there is also a lingering sense of attachment towards Rama. Dasharatha is attached to Rama. And that attachment becomes the reason for Dasharatha's demise. And a good way, like I said, a yardstick would be dharma. When Dasharatha makes Rama the crown prince, the reason is almost wholly dharmic. In fact, I think that Dasharatha kind of uses the Sabha as a litmus test to make sure it's dharmic for that very reason. I think Dasharatha himself is aware of his attachment to Rama on a fundamental level. It's not just because of his virtues, but he's actually attached towards Rama as a son. And I think that attachment came from the set of actions that's happening here. So he's aware of that. So he uses the Sabha as a kind of a litmus test to make sure that his attachment is not getting in the way of Rajadharma or Abhyudaya on a whole, development on a whole. So that love for Rama, that virtuous love for Rama that Dasharatha identifies is kind of true, it's not masked. So there, with that yardstick of dharma, we can see that action to be correct. However, whatever happens next, Dasharatha's promise to Kaikeyi, Dasharatha, losing his life over Rama going to the forest for 14 years. All of this seems to come from that small place of attachment. So Dasharatha's love is somewhat of a conundrum. On one hand, we see Dasharatha's love for Rama's virtues, somebody who is able to, appreciate Rama's gunas, asvadanam pandrathu. Dasharatha does that. And on the other hand, we see Dasharatha's kind of attachment towards his son. And that attachment leads to a negative result overall for Ayodhya. Right? So, this to me is the conundrum of Dasharatha. This is what I think is interesting about Dasharatha and his death. And this whole death part also seems very interesting. The fact that, his past actions could have gave lead to that attachment, could have led to that attachment as a consequence, is something I think is interesting as well. So with this, we've looked at most of the biological fathers in Ramayana. There's not many biological fathers in Ramayana that are discussed in details. The next person I could find was Sampati and his son, I'll be honest. But these three kind of show us different traits. So I'll just encapsulate it once. Ravana shows a level of care, a level of affection, and a level of concern, a level of motivation. Vali shows the genuine wish of welfare for his son. He wants to do what's good for him, to the point where he's even ready to give him to someone else. Dasharatha's love goes beyond fatherhood to the virtues that Rama has, and that bhava that he develops with Rama is centered and is rooted in those virtues. But there is that attachment that Dasharatha has, and that attachment maybe doesn't make him the ideal father. So is he the example? That's an open-ended question. So next part, father figures. So,
Just show the conclusion first.
oh, sorry.
Other things.
Then I'll end with one slide then. The activity I asked them for. The activity.
Activity. Okay. Fine.
Let me go. Yeah. So,
He wants to tell something.
yes?
Mike.
Oh yeah, sure.
No, when you talked about Dasharatha and ended it kind of in a hazy state, whether Dasharatha is an ideal father or not. I think this is my thought process. Dasharatha's probably love for the truth was more than what he had as a love for his son Rama. Because that is kind of displayed everywhere. He is in fact in a position to prostrate before Kaikeyi just because that he had so great love for truth or Satya. தமிழ்ல பேசணும்னா பெட்டரா இருக்குடா. அவருடைய சத்திய நிஷ்டை அப்படின்றதானது அவருக்கு ராமரிடத்திலேயே வச்ச பிரேமையை விட ஜாஸ்தியா இருந்ததோ அப்படின்றதுனால தான் அவரால் சத்திய நிஷ்டையை விட முடியல. ஏன்னா இல்லைன்னு சொல்லியிருப்பார் ராமர்கிட்ட, நீ இங்கே வாழ்ந்துக்கலாமே அப்படின்னு. அப்போ அவருடைய சத்திய நிஷ்டை அவர் ராமர்கிட்ட வச்ச பிரேமையை விட ஜாஸ்தியா இருக்குன்றது ஒரு பாயிண்ட். இன்னொன்னு என்ன அப்படின்னா, ஒரு ராமரை விட்டு பிரிய முடியலன்றது ராம விரகத்தினால சாகுறார். புத்தி நாசம் நீங்க சொன்னது இந்த மோகாத் அவருக்கு புத்தி நாசம் ஆயிடுத்தோ என்னவோன்னு எனக்கு சந்தேகமா இருக்கு. ஏன்னா அவர் சத்திய நிஷ்டையை விடக்கூடாதுன்றது தெளிவா இருக்கார். கடைசி மட்டும் சத்தியத்தை நான் காப்பாத்துவேன், சத்தியத்துக்காக நான் என்ன வேணா பண்ணுவேன், ராமரையே விடணும் ஆனாலும், ஆனா சத்தியத்தை நான் விட மாட்டேன் அப்படின்னு இருக்கிறதுல தெளிவா இருக்கிறதுனால மோகாத் பவதி புத்தி நாசகான்றது அங்க ஏத்துக்க முடியாதோன்னு எனக்கு தோன்றுறது.
இப்போ
ஒரு நிமிஷம் டைம் ஆயிடுச்சு. மேக்ஸிமம் டைம் ஆயிடுச்சுங்க. ஸோ இந்த டிஸ்கஷன் ஆனால் பின்னாடி டைம் கிடைக்கும் வச்சுக்கலாம். We will have time somewhere because earth is spherical. இது சைல்ஸ்.
ஆமா, இது
பண்ணிடலாமா? ஒரு 2 minutes தான் இருக்கு.
2 minutes முடியும். Okay. Sorry for taking your time. So first,
ஒரு நிமிஷம். Definitely we need to discuss on this. It's a very vital point. Can Dasharatha's death be taken as what is that? Yayata Vishyan Pumsaha. For that, can we take it as example? The vital question. We can't live like this. Point number 1. And point number 2. Whatever it can be, even if you take Dasharatha to be example for Jayata Vishyansa Sindhasteshu Jayate, what does it contribute in his fatherhood? How can it make him an ideal father or not? Because ideal father is different. Okay, it has nothing to do with the ideal father. Okay, this is my opinion. Here, the topic we deal is whether he is not question fatherhood of Dasharatha. Okay, let us see. Let us further discuss it.
okay.
Now child spoke.
POV. Our path, yes. So before we start, I guess I'll give applause for the other audience I had to contract. So let's start by doing that. Applause is good. So, with that being said, I kind of, embarked on a little journey yesterday. I wandered around with this notebook, went around asking people. Unfortunately, I could only ask boys, and didn't have time to ask, a very unbiased set or a sample set. But I kind of asked them the same question. Yeah, these are the results. They look really nice. But the question I asked them was, what makes an ideal father? And I asked them to give 2 responses. And I got around 30 to 35 responses. I got some very interesting responses. I mean, I've actually, tallied the major ones here. Sorry. Tallied the major ones here. But, some of the interesting responses were stuff like, my father, Rama. We got some of those. We got sequential love, happy, he should be playful. And then this one was a very good one too. No unwanted tittu. So, these were some of the interesting responses.
What's the definition of unwanted?
I have to ask the child that. I don't know if they gave their name, but I'll probably ask them after this. But overall, something that I noticed, and this is why I was, underlying caring, nurturing, role model, responsibility, welfare, and service. I think these 3 are essential facets of fatherly love. And I wanted to see whether children thought that way. So, I took the responses and I got a lot of things like caring, nurturing. Out of the 30 responses, I got like 7 responses just talking about caring and nurturing. Another big thing was a role model. A father has to be a good role model. A father has to have a sense of responsibility. And I got, 5 responses in that. These are these are like the top 3 responses. Let's put it like that. And the biggest probably are almost 1/3 of the responses. So 10 responses went into welfare and service. So service, yes, welfare and service. This is what some children said, and that's very interesting. So what I want, everybody who went through the small exercise, I made you guys go for a minute. I want you guys to see how that aligns with what these guys wrote. Is it different? Is it the same? If it's the same, why do you think it's the same? If it's different, why do you think it's different? And with that, I'll end. I mean, I wanted everybody to keep that in mind. As we talk about fatherly love, it's not just about looking at and analyzing various fathers in Ramayana. It's about how we take it into our lives. What facets of fatherly love are there? What is the essence of fatherly love? What's behind it? And as we search for it ourselves, I think that, looking at this, looking at Ramayana helps us in that search. And I believe that, this thing helps as well. So I'll end with that open-ended question. Sita.
Please assemble at 1 o'clock after having